This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, on Thursday, April the 18th. And just like always, coming to you right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios and 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. How's everybody doing tonight? Hope you guys are doing great. Hope you guys have been listening to the shows. If you missed last night's show, it might be worth going back and watching and listening to that show. Man, anytime I talk about the brain, I just get super excited. I thought last night's show was worth listening to. Got some good feedback on it today, and you guys on the radio, if you miss these shows or if they're not coming through clear, I got some feedback today that we cut out a lot, and so I need to try to figure out why that's happening to you guys on the radio. But you guys out there in social media, if you miss it, come back and see it. And because last night's show, we talked about the brain, and we talked about the right and left hemisphere, and we got back into the Master and His Emissary a little bit. Favorite book, non-Bible book of all time. I love that book and the work done by Ian McGilchrist to put that together. I think it should be mandatory reading for every health professional on the planet. You should understand it. You should break it down. You should understand what is going on because it answers a lot of questions. And so if you missed that show, you can go to the Rock Health and Wellness Centers on Facebook. You can go to @HealthFromTheRock on YouTube, or you can go to Dr. Jason Clemmons on X, formerly known as Twitter, and you can listen to any of those shows. So if you're a radio listener and you're missing this live broadcast, or you're listening to it but you just didn't hear exactly everything that I said, or if I said something that you would like to hear again, we've got those things for you, and you can go and listen to them and get the information. Excuse me. And you can go get the information. If you have questions about any of it, you can send me a text. Our text line is 806-794-0400. And I'd be glad to visit with you individually about your health. If there's anything I can do to help you with it. If you hear something on the show that you want to talk about, then please don't hesitate to contact me. And because we really do want you to understand, I want you to understand that what I said. And sometimes this stuff is complicated. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to see exactly to get it all. So that's what it's about. So tonight's show, we're going to talk. I don't know if I think I just said that. We're going to talk about conversations, and we're going to talk about, because I thought there were some deep, good conversations that we had today, and I want to just go over that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about CoQ10 first, because the supplement of the day, we use it from orthomolecular products, but CoQ10, 300 milligrams. And you might ask yourself, what is CoQ10? What difference does it make if I have any of it? And is it something that I should be taking? Well, let me just read you some information about CoQ10 so maybe you can make that decision for yourself. What is it for? Well, it enhances cellular energy production and physical performance. It supports cardiovascular health. It boosts antioxidant activity. It supports blood sugar balance already within normal limits. It promotes neurological health. And what is CoQ10? CoQ10 is also known as ubiquinone, is a proenzyme produced naturally within the body. CoQ10 plays a critical role in energy, which is ATP production, and it's one of the most powerful known lipid-soluble antioxidants, protecting cells, organs, and tissues from damage caused by oxidative stress and free radicals. That's one of the conversations I'm going to have tonight. That is the patient I haven't seen in about 3 years. She's been dealing with cancer. I didn't know that. And when we talked about Dr. Seyfried's work of the cancer is a metabolic process, and we talked about how there's ATP production, mitochondrial damage of some sort, mitochondrial dysfunction of some sort in cancer. And I'm not an oncologist, so I don't know all of the details of exactly all of everything that happens with cancer, but I have broken down that book, and I have reported on that book, and so we'll get into that here in a bit. But that's one of the things CoQ10. One of the things that CoQ10 helps: oxidative stress and free radicals. CoQ10 inhibits protein and lipid oxidation and protects mitochondrial DNA from oxidative damage. This CoQ10 300 milligram formulation is highly concentrated for those that need to quickly and effectively increase levels of CoQ10. CoQ10 300 is delivered in a proprietary oil-based formula and includes natural vitamin E for enhanced absorption and maximum stability. So, what causes CoQ10 depletion? CoQ10 depletion, the body's ability to produce and metabolize CoQ10 has been reported to decrease with age. CoQ10 deficiency may be caused by insufficient dietary intake of CoQ10, impairment in CoQ10 and production, impairment in CoQ10 production and drug-induced CoQ10 depletion, gene mutations, and oxidative stress, and HMG-CoA reductase is an enzyme required for synthesis of cholesterol and CoQ10. Cholesterol-lowering medications inhibit this enzyme in order to reduce cholesterol synthesis, but may also simultaneously deplete CoQ10. 13 controlled studies conducted between 1990 and 2004 demonstrated significant CoQ10 depletion secondary to use of statin medication used to lower cholesterol levels. These studies demonstrated a range of 19 to 54% decrease in CoQ10 levels in patients on statin therapy. In the event of CoQ10 depletion, supplementation can improve CoQ10 status and help maintain optimal levels in the body. So it's part of my daily regimen. That's the CoQ10. Put it in my pill bottle. Take it every day. When I read stuff and it says helps ATP production, when I read stuff and it says helps mitochondrial function, that's why we take it right there. And I just wanted to share that with you. And that is the supplement of the day. If you're interested in it, you can get it anywhere on the planet. Usually, we get it from Orthomolecular Products. You can always get it from us if you want it. You can get it from Amazon because you can get everything from Amazon. I think you can buy houses from Amazon now, right? So that's CoQ10, and I just wanted to share that with you. So let's talk about some conversations that we had today, because I really did have some good ones today, and there's one of them I'm going to keep to myself for tonight. That's kind of a weird thing to say, but I'll share it with you at a later time that I had. But there were some serious conversations, and there were some legitimate serious questions that I got asked today. And one of the people asked me a question that, and she said, "Hey Doc, tell me what you think of apple cider vinegar." And so I thought it was a really good question, and I tried to give her a very serious answer to how I felt about apple cider vinegar. You know, whenever you, and this is what I told her, and not exactly word for word, but this is the conversation that we had about this subject. And I told her, I said, it's hard. First of all, it's very hard to find out exactly the truth about things. I actually had that conversation twice today. I had the conversation this morning in my workout class after the workout, because we were talking about how do you know when a person makes something up. Like one of my ladies was talking to me, and she said, sometimes my mom just makes stuff up, and she's been doing that my whole life. And so she's like, how do you know that most of the stuff we know isn't just made up? How do you know that everything that I'm saying right here on the show tonight isn't made up? And really, you don't. I mean, it's like I try to cite the sources when I talk about it and try to give you all the information that I can when I'm talking about it. But it's pretty obvious that sometimes there's no way to know for sure exactly. And I said, you could just go on Twitter and read the top 10 things on your news feed on your feed on Twitter, and there's absolutely no way. I don't know if any of that stuff is real. Like I could do that right now on the show, and I could just go right now to my whatever is bad news for the COVID vaccinated. Countless warnings about the COVID shots have been labeled conspiracy theories, only to be later confirmed. From the Vigilant Fox. I don't have any idea who the Vigilant Fox is or if anything they say is real or true or anything. Don't know it's not, but don't know that it is. Here's one about vitamin D and cancer. All my stuff's going to be about that, right? With the recent explosion of COVID-19 mRNA vaccine-induced turbo cancers in young people. How do I know that's right? Here's something from Robert Kennedy. There's something from Laura Loomer. Illegal aliens just arrested outside the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City after you assaulted both me and somebody else. Okay, what I know about that, I don't know that stuff is true. And so the point I'm trying to make is, and I want to try to give you guys a boring look into my Twitter account, but what I was trying to, when the girl asked me about, when the lady asked me about the apple cider vinegar, it's a tricky answer because one of the things that I did, because I actually studied that because I want to know something about it. And one of the things I did is I read a book that was published back in and I think I actually did a book report on it here on our Wednesday night show. But I read a book that was published like in the 50s or something that had story after story after story of the benefit of apple cider vinegar. And I talked to old people and they tell me the benefits of apple cider vinegar. But when I go to do research, I'll find all kinds of mixed information about that. And so sometimes I have to try to use my brain. My dad used to say that a lot when I was a kid. He'd be like, "Hey, use your brain." and sometimes I have to get reports back from doctors that see patients in the field and not rely all strictly on this left hemisphere. I heard someone say that Dr. Hyman was pseudoscience yesterday. I saw a cardiologist make a comment that Dr. Hyman and Gary Brecka and somebody else, and I don't know Gary Brecka enough to know whether or not he's saying what he's saying is real or not. I think he said Huberman maybe even in that deal, but he said Dr. Hyman for sure. And he said Dr. Hyman was pseudoscience. And all of a sudden, now that's a thing that people will say. Like, this guy just spouting off at the mouth. It's like, look, just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean that's factual. And just because it doesn't have a double-blind clinically controlled trial that doesn't mean it's factual either. Because that the way that it's done, the way that those research papers are done, you can manipulate anything you want to say whatever you want to say, right? That's what we talked about before about how the cholesterol stuff, like they know the test answer before they make the product, and then they'll come back around and make the product to answer the test question that says, does it lower cholesterol? Yeah, but it also lowers a lot of other stuff too, like this wasn't part of the conversation, but I've got it right here. Dr. Murphy's had this on his page for years, and anytime you want to go, I got his current article review, and it's right here. I got 2023 to 2024, but I've also got the statin notes, and this is, and I may have at some point. And this comes from Statin Drug Side Effects and the Misguided War on Cholesterol by Dwayne Graveline, MD, 2006. And it is the breakdown of the metabolic process of, let me see where I'm at. Yeah, I'll let you look at it right here, but this is the breakdown of the metabolic process of cholesterol. And so let me just make sure that you're getting it. And you guys on the radio, you can go back and check this out tonight and see if we got it to you. But this whole thing, this is how your body breaks down. And what does it take? It takes glucose. It takes glucose and it runs it through all these pathways, and it breaks it, and it gives off all these different parts. And so vitamin D synthesis, there's cholesterol. There's your cholesterol that shows up right there. And then you go down. And this is a more simple picture right here. And I think you guys are getting that as it's going through. It's complicated, but step one, you get the acetyl-CoA, and then you get this whole HMG-CoA. That's what I just talked about, of how important it is, right? And what CoQ10 and how CoQ10 has something to do with it. And then that step goes through there, and it brings it down, and this is inhibited by the statin drug right there. So everything below this step is now going to be disrupted in some form or fashion as it's going down there. And what that article we just read said, 19 to 54% of CoQ10 is going to be disrupted, because where is CoQ10? It's right here. Step 11A, ubiquinone CoQ10. And it goes in there to the mitochondrial respiratory chain. It's vitally important for our bodies, right? Neuropeptides over here on 11B, glycoproteins, all the way down, vitamin D biosynthesis, and then goes down to bile acids, goes down to estrogen, goes down to aldosterone, cortisol, testosterone. All these things are downstream from what's going on right up here, that's getting inhibited by those statin drugs. So what will a company do that sells statin drugs? What they'll do is they know that they can manipulate the science to tell you that they'll make the drug so that it fits exactly what you think it's going to fit. And so to get back to the question and to get back to the conversation, sometimes as a doctor, I have to rely on the in the field docs to tell me about some of the things that's been going on. And sometimes I have to go back years, because apple cider vinegar, I'm pretty sure, I don't know the processing of apple cider vinegar, but I'm pretty sure that the apple cider vinegar of 1950 was the same as the apple cider vinegar of today. And so the stories that I've been told in the book that I read tells me that there may be some things. And she said to me, well, the reason I do that, the reason I take it is because I want to lose some weight, and I read that it might help me lose some weight. And I said, that would not be the thing that I would do. And that's what I think happens a lot in supplements, and especially fish oil, right? And we made this comment before, but they'll take the fish oil, they'll test it up against one thing. They'll measure it at a certain volume. They'll take 200 milligrams of fish oil for 90 days and then ask, did it do anything to lower your cardiovascular risk? Well, if you don't have the volume right and you don't have the time right, then the test comes out negative, and then the research comes out and says that fish oil is not good for cardiovascular system. I said, all right, run the test again. Do a baseline of 3,000 milligrams a day and do that for 2 years. And then tell me what happens. You'll get a different answer than if you did 200 milligrams for 90 days. See what I mean? Like, you got to be careful. That to me is the manipulation of the system, and that to me is how the industry will trick you. So my answer to her was, look, I think there's some validity in that. I think that's a good idea. And I think that, but just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Okay. So that was just one conversation today that I thought was pretty cool that I wanted to talk about. Another conversation that I had this morning was about it was really kind of funny because um, as you guys know, my wife my wife's parents had a donut and cake shop for 22 years in Roswell, New Mexico, and they made the absolute best donuts in the world. And anybody that's ever been to Mama Tucker's Donuts in Roswell, New Mexico, knows that I'm telling the truth. And there, if you lived in Roswell or anywhere around eastern New Mexico for in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, you know that was the truth. So the it was absolutely great, and I had that conversation today with one of my ladies because we were talking about how easy it is to make money, and then we were talking about the how does the um, how do we get the breakdown of the body, and when did the breakdown of the body start, and how does the breakdown of the body start? Because she's got some neuropathy in her feet, she's got some tingling in her hand, she's got some different issues that's going on. And it was funny, I was like, I could make a lot of money by opening a donut store, and I literally could make a lot. I could come. I really truly believe I could become a millionaire within a year or 2 years if I wanted to open up a donut store. Now, the hard part for me is what I said. I said the hard part for me would be to sell the donuts, and she's like, "Oh no, selling's easy." And I'm like, "No, not the selling part. The actual pushing the donut across the counter to the mom with the little kid." And knowing that I got put sprinkles all over that pink donut to try to attract that little kid to eat that donut. That would be the hard part for me. Knowing what I know about sugar and knowing how I know that it breaks us down, that would be the hard part for me, because now I would know it would be like it would be a difficult situation. And that is something that happens to us on a daily basis. We get tricked over and over and over again about different kinds of things that can really that are detrimental to our health. And it was so funny because this lady had been to some ball games recently, and she's like, "You'd be proud of me. I didn't eat a Frito pie at the ball games." That's what she told me last on her first visit this week. So her first visit this week, she told me, "You'd be proud of me because I didn't eat a Frito pie at the ball games." And I'm like, "Yeah." So today, when she's asking me what breaks down the body, I said, "Well, we could go back and look at Frito pies." And then she just busted out laughing, and she's like, "Yep, I guess that's a true statement." So um, our food is super important, and our food is important for us to keep our bodies functioning as well as we can function for as long as we can. And that was just one little piece of an information, of a conversation that I thought was kind of funny today. Um, Another conversation that I had today that was a little bit more serious was about that cancer thing. And I want to draw your attention back to Dr. Seyfried, Thomas Seyfried. Let me see if I can pull him up. If you have cancer, or you have anyone in your family that deals with cancer, um, there's a book that's worth reading. And all you got to do is you can go. First, let me talk about the book. I'll just show you the book, and you can look at it on your own time. And this is the book. Oops, that's not it. This is the book that we went over. It's called Cancer, a Metabolic Syndrome. And no, Cancer, a Metabolic Disease. Cancer, a Metabolic Disease, right there, by Thomas Seyfried. I think it's how you say that. Um, but that book right there, that's an expensive book, but that's a book I've got right there, and it's it's a good book when it comes to if understanding cancer. Now, I'm not an oncologist. I'm not trying to treat your cancer, but basically what that book will say, and we've broken it down on the show. Basically, that what that book will tell you is that it gets down to mitochondrial damage, and that's something that you might consider. And you could go right there. The diet that starves cancer. Cancer study findings. And this is Thomas Seyfried, the professor of biology, argues that cancer is a metabolic disease that can be treated with the ketogenic diet and fasting. I'm not saying that. I'm just sharing information with you. I just shared it with her. I wasn't telling her how to treat her cancer. I wasn't trying to be her oncologist. There was nothing like that was going on. I was simply sharing a piece of information with her, and the conversation got pretty deep, and the conversation got back to the same conversations that we all talk about here on the show. And because we talk about a lot the mitochondria, and that's what we were just talking about, was the mitochondria inside the cell. And when we get back from the break, I want to break this down one more time so that everybody kind of has an idea. Everybody kind of has an idea what we're talking about. So we'll take a little break on the radio. We'll come back. We'll talk about cancer, and we're also going to talk about Diet Cokes tonight and aspartame and that, because that was one of my girls said, "Hey, would you talk about Diet Cokes on your show?" And so I thought that would be something cool that we could talk about tonight too. So we'll be right back right after these messages. So if you've got cancer and 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 you're going through chemo and radiation and you're doing all that stuff, well, it might be something that's worth your time to understand about what's going on inside your cell, and how your mitochondria is producing your ATP. And but the one thing that I want to say about that, and I'll break it down. I'll wait till the radio people come back on before we break it down. But because I do want to say something about that it might be worth understanding, is that mitochondria was outside that cell at some point in time. So there was a time where the mitochondria, because the mitochondria has its own DNA, and there is a conversation that goes on. And basically, what the Seyfried book is all about is the Warburg effect. And if you want to look that up, you can look that up. But it's going to get back down to mitochondrial dysfunction. And it was a really interesting conversation we had about where it started, because it's in her arm, and we were talking about where it might have started and how it might have started, and some different things right there. And I just thought that was it was quite. It was a big deal in her life, right? It still is a big deal in her life. She's trying as hard as she can to fight it. She's had 4 surgeries. It's been a very difficult time, right? So we want to make sure. Am I treating that cancer? Absolutely not. I'm not treating the cancer. Um, I'm simply trying to share with her things that can help her be as healthy as she could possibly be. So let's talk about that. Let me get us back on the radio. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, and we're just talking about conversations we had today. And one of the conversations that we had today was cancer and the Seyfried book, and what goes on with cancer. And this is from Dr. Seyfried's book. And so I'm not trying to be an oncologist. I'm trying to share information. At one point in history, that mitochondria was its own thing. It's outside the cell, and the mitochondria actually has a nucleus of its own, and it has its DNA of its own. So you're talking about an entity within the cell that at one time was outside the cell. Now, I'm not saying we evolved that way, because I'm not that guy, right? But what I will say is that God might have made that mitochondria before he decided to make the cell. So I'll be fine with that thought. So what happens? There's two components that Dr. Seyfried breaks down that happens inside the cell. We've got a cell, we've got a glucose gate, and glucose is on the outside of the cell, and that's what is going to go through these processes to help us make ATP. Is we're going to use that glucose, and what will happen is the cell will send a signal to the nucleus. The cell will send a signal to the nucleus, and it will tell the nucleus to don't kill us. I'm trying to solve this problem. That we've got a respiration problem going on. The mitochondria is having problems getting ATP made. So the mitochondria is having problems in this process of making ATP. And because of that, we're losing power to the cell. And what should happen in a good cell is we should send a signal to the nucleus and when the nucleus realizes that we are losing power, what should happen is the nucleus should kill us. Apoptosis is what it's called. Programmed cell death. The nucleus knows, hey, if we're not breathing, kill the cell. This cell's gone. It's not any good anymore. We need to move on. That's what innate intelligence will do. But what happens in a cancer cell is, for some reason, there's a signal that's sent to the nucleus to say, hey, don't do that. Don't do apoptosis because I'm trying really hard to fix this problem, so don't kill us yet. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is it sends another signal over to the glucose gate to open itself wide open and let any glucose just diffuse into the cell. So now we don't have to have this gated situation with the glucose. We can just get the glucose to get right into the cell as quickly as possible to give me as much opportunity to make this ATP. And what it does is it gives us just enough power to keep this cell together so that when this cell divides, we end up with two cancerous cells. And it's all about the cytoplasm in the cell. It's not about the nucleus. And Dr. Seyfried's got a book, and you could probably get that on the internet. You could probably get that picture of the division of cells. And what he found was when not the nucleus was bad, but when the cytoplasm inside the cell was bad, and that cell divides, that cell becomes a cancer cell again. And then what's going to happen is that cell is going to divide, and now we're going to get two more cancer cells. And that cell is going to divide, and we're going to get two more cancer cells. And if you put enough of those cancer cells together, then that's where you get a tumor. So if we were going to go through and try to do our very best from a health standpoint, not from a cancer treatment standpoint, but from a health standpoint, what would I do? What would I do if I got diagnosed with cancer to try to give myself the absolute best thing to do? Now, I definitely would talk to my oncologist. I'd go talk to my cancer doctors. I'm not saying I don't. We had a great conversation, and I'd not say one thing was wrong with the way that she is treating what she's doing. Now she has an oncologist and a health doctor working with her. So what can I do to try to, what could she do? What would you do if you got diagnosed with cancer? What did you do if you're that person? Did you do the old Tim McGraw song? Did you go skydiving or Rocky Mountain climbing or whatever, right? What if you got that diagnosis that said, hey, this is serious. This is really, really serious. You might say to yourself, man, I want to do something that might give me a chance. That might give me a chance to function better. And that right there would be why we would have a ketogenic diet. And what does a ketogenic diet means? It means that we need to keep our carbohydrate intake low. We need to keep it low so that we can really choke out all of these cells and that we could get rid of those cells. So I wanted to have that conversation with you guys because I just wanted to present it to you. I just wanted to present it to you and give you an idea. I know there's it's a lot of scribbling and all that stuff, but I just wanted to present that to you, and because I felt like that was an important thing. I want to piggyback off of what we talked about last night just a little bit, because I can't stress enough how spinal issues are secondary to brain issues unless you have an event. I really wish people could understand that. Like when I evaluated a spine today, and had that spine had degeneration in the neck, and it had forward head posture, and there was a loss of the cervical curve. And the question that was asked to me, the conversation that was asked to me, was, how did this start and what caused it? Well, I don't know the answer to that question. There's a lot of things that could have caused it. And we could have caused it in the birthing process. In the birthing process, we could have put vacuum distraction or forceps on the skull and pulled on the skull. Because I did have a conversation today about a little baby that has a misshapen head, and that maybe we need to wear some sort of helmet. And we've been trying to work with me and another doctor have been trying to work with this child to get the occiput pulled back, because the occiput is up under where it's supposed to be. The back panel of the brain, somewhere during the birthing process, got stuck up underneath there, and it's been very difficult. And so this other doctor and myself are working on this little baby, and that's one of the things. So you can have subluxations and disruption from birth. You can have a misshapen head from the process of going through the birth canal, and because it's supposed to overlap, and you can get some problems going through there, and then you put that suction cup on top of it and pull, and that can change the way that things work. So you can have that right from the beginning. Well, then you could go along and life can happen, and just think about all the little things. I saw something the other day. I was in a restaurant or a store or something, and I saw a mom taking a little toddler. Maybe they were like taking them to the bathroom, or they were just walking them down the aisle. I don't remember exactly where I was that I saw that, but the little toddler lost its balance, and the little toddler was trying to walk. It could barely walk, and it was walking as fast as it could, but the mom was walking in front of it, and was going fast, and just had it by the arm, and the little toddler like tripped and fell, and the mom just jerked him up off the ground by the arm. And I almost hollered. I was like, like, don't do that. Like, don't stretch that whole, don't grab a hold of that like that. Like that. But think about the whiplash situation that could go along with that. Or think about what happens if you get hit in the face when you're in the 8th grade by a basketball that you didn't see coming. Think about the whiplash type situation that you could have. Think about crashing your tricycle when you were 3, or jumping on the trampoline. I tried to do a backflip on a trampoline one time and landed on top of my head and jammed my chin down in my chest. I went to the beach one time, and I had my whole life, I'd seen all these shows, Baywatch and all that stuff, where those lifeguards are on the beach and they got to go save somebody, and then they just take off running, and they run out there to the beach, and then here comes that first wave, and then they just dive over into the ocean and go out there and save the person. So I was going to do that. First time I ever went to the ocean, went to the Gulf of Mexico, ran out there like that, took off running. Here comes the wave, jumped right over the top of the wave to dive into the water. Don't ever do that, because the other side of that wave is about this deep. That was almost deadly. I remember hitting the top of my head on the sand. Oh, immediately got a headache, jammed my neck, all that sort of thing, right? So there are all kinds of reasons that a person can have a whiplash type situation from a trauma that goes on, or some sort of, or can have a cervical curve. That's one way you can get a bad cervical curve. But the other way that you can get a bad cervical curve is to get a frontal lobe that doesn't work. And whether you lose it somewhere along the way, or you never did develop it properly when you were a kid, because that frontal lobe inhibits flexor muscles. Don't ever forget that. You might as well just memorize that and just walk around with it. Tell your friends about it. Make sure that you really get that. Flexor muscles. What does inhibit means? It means turn them off. Frontal lobe inhibits flexor muscles. Frontal lobe turns off your flexors. So if your frontal lobe's not working, your flexor muscles are turned on. So what happens when I flex my SCM muscle, I pull it downward. If the muscle that goes from right underneath your ear, if you're listening to me on the radio, just touch your earlobe and go right underneath your earlobe, and you could feel there's a muscle, there's an edge of your skull, and then there's a muscle that's tied on right below it. And then just follow that muscle, and it goes right down to the front of your sternum right there, right above that little notch on your chest. And that little muscle is a flexor muscle. And if you flex one side, then it will get tight. If you flex the other side, it will get tight. If you flex both of them together, you'll pull your head forward. You'll pull your head forward and down by having increased muscle tone on that flexor. You'll also take your pec muscle and rotate it in. Remember we talked about the little girl with the cerebral palsy yesterday? And when I checked her posture, I saw the back of the hand on one side and the V of the thumb on the other. That's from the brain, right? So this lady didn't report any traumatic experiences that might have caused the whiplash. Now, she might not have could remembered all of them, but she didn't report them. And so is there a way that it could be brain first? And the answer is yes. It could be brain first. We can have low brain activity that causes us to have tight flexor muscles. Could you tear your rotator cuff because of brain activity? Absolutely, you can. Can you have anterior bicep tendonitis right up here at the top? If you got that pain, it's in the front of your shoulder, that could be coming from the brain first. This is very common. This right here comes from the brain. And I know that sounds crazy because you're like, why does my shoulder hurts? But how many of us got this thing that comes down like that? Like this pain. You got your hand on your shoulder and you just rub your shoulder down towards your elbow. And you got that discomfort that's going on, and you got this pain that's in the front of the shoulder. And do we ever think about the fact that it could be my brain first? Or I've got this internal or external rotation of my hip. My hip is turned in, and I'm pigeon-toed. I'm pigeon-toed on both sides. How should I address that? Should I address it from a hip joint problem, a hip joint standpoint, or hey, is it a better idea not just address it from the hip joint standpoint, but what if I looked from the brain first? And so we had a really good conversation about that. We had a good conversation about, hey, listen, I know that you've never experienced this before. I know that you've never been to a chiropractor before, and you never had anybody talk to you about this stuff before. But I want to show you how your body works. I want to show you how neurology works, and I want to show you how those things are tied together. And when you start to tie in how your musculoskeletal system and your disrupted sleep and your sugar handling weight problems all are tied together from brain activity, it's an eye-opening experience for the person. The person really does. They really start to get it. And that was another conversation that I had that um, is a that I thought I would share with you tonight. Just that was it was I thought it was great. It was really good conversation between me and the patient, and I think that the patient she saw that and she was very receptive to the whole thing. Another conversation that I had today that I wanted to share with you is a conversation that a guy said. He said a statement to me, and he said because he's relatively new to the office, and he said to me, "I think I figured out that my degenerative problem in my spine is hereditary because I was talking to my parents about it, and my parents didn't know I was coming to the chiropractor, and I was I was talking to my parents about it, and they're like, "Well, that's exactly what your grandmother had, and she was all hunched over." And she had all kinds of spinal problems. And I don't even know if he told me that she had some sort of surgery or something like that. And 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 it immediately went into this idea that, well, I know why I have my problem. It's because it's of hereditary. And I said, well, if you want my response to that, because if that's what you believe, that's fine with me. I mean, who knows who's right? Maybe it is. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and I'll be humble and say that. That's not doesn't bother me at all to say. But what I will say is that I don't believe that for 1 second. There's not a one. There's not one bit of me that believes that my spinal hygiene has anything to do with either one of my parents or either any four of my grandparents or any eight of my great grandparents. I don't believe for 1 second that the status of any disc in my spine has anything to do with any of my hereditary features. And my dad has ankylosing spondylitis. And if you don't know what that means, you can look that up. And that's where your spine fuses from your sacrum up into your skull. And I've mentioned it to you before, and you guys that listen to the show on a regular basis, you know that. And but my dad has ankylosing spondylitis, and when I was in my early 20s, I started having SI joint pain. My daughter's got SI joint pain. There is some sort of hereditary gene that might be flowing through there. But when I was in my 20s, I went to the doctor. He checked my blood, and I have the HLA-B27 marker. And that is a marker that was, for years, I don't know if it still is, but for years it was a marker that was tied into ankylosing spondylitis. And he said, you're in your 20s, you got the HLA-B27 marker, you've got SI joint pain, you fit all the markers of a person that is likely to have ankylosing spondylitis. And I said, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I left his office and I went straight over to my brother-in-law's office, who's a chiropractor. And I said, Rick, I don't care if you got to adjust me every single day. There's no possible way that I'm going to let my spine fuse. Now, my dad didn't have that advantage in 1963 or 4. He didn't have the advantage that I had. He didn't have the advantage of living. Um, shoot, this was like 1993, 94, and maybe the spring of 1994 when all this was happening. I was 23 years old, and I was at Tech, and I was helping coach, and that's when that happened. And I went to the team doctor, and he's the one that told me about what was happening. And I told him, I said, and so, but so this is 1993. What my dad went through this in 1963 or 1964. So one thing that I had was I had my entire life living in a house with a person that had ankylosing spondylitis. I saw the processes of it going on. I saw the pain that my dad was in from the time I was born all the way through. I saw the lack of mobility that my dad had. I saw the amount of aspirin that he had to take to try to control his inflammation, because that's what they told him. In 1964, that's what they told him. You're going to have to take aspirin to control your arthritis. And that's what they called it, arthritis. and that's what they said. And it's a genetic problem, and it gets passed down through generations, and you can have it in. But I don't believe in that one bit. What I believe in is epigenetics. What I believe in is the environment of the cell. I have advantages that my dad didn't have. Therefore, I took advantage of those advantages. I guess you is there a possibility of having advantages that you don't take advantage of? I don't really know, but um, seriously, I went over there and got adjusted, and I started getting adjusted, and I started taking fish oil, and I started taking vitamin D, and I started doing some of those things that Dad didn't have the luxury and knowledge about when he was going through it. And there's no ankylosing in my spine whatsoever. I've got no bamboo spine. I've got no lack of mobility. I've got no pain in my spine. I don't wake up with it. If I work in the flower bed or whatever, I get sore. Sometimes if I'm working out, I might get a little sore. But for the most part, I don't have any of that. And even though I have the same genetics, even though I got tested and have the same genetics, even though I got told by the medical doctor when I was 23 years old that, look, you fit the description of all that, I just don't believe that's true at all. And I don't believe that degeneration in your neck has one flipping thing to do with your mama or your grandma or any of that stuff. I think degeneration has to do with two components. I think it has to do with abnormal biomechanics, abnormal movement, abnormal spinal movement, and I think it has to do with abnormal biochemistry. I think those are the two things that cause degeneration more than any other single thing in the spine. I think those are the two things that it can come down to. Either it's not moving properly, the joint is not moving properly, or there's abnormal chemistry that's going on. And the reason that it might not be moving properly is because of several different things. There's loads and forces on the spine that change the facets, they change the spinal structure. You can have morphology or whatever it's called that causes that because there's pressures put on the bones in the wrong directions and for a long period of time. That's one reason it might not function right. But the other reason it might not function properly is neurology. It might not be moving properly because the brain is not firing properly, and that might be the reason that it's breaking down. And so, regardless, if my dad had it, my granddad had it, my great granddad had it, it has. I really don't believe that has anything to do with the way that my spine moves. I don't think I have it because it's genetic. And if we really wanted to study that hard enough and we really wanted to talk about it hard enough, probably what we would find is that there was some sort of marketing, advertising, pharmaceutical campaign to make us believe that so that we could take aspirin for the rest of our life. Like if I was dealing with inflammation, I wouldn't deal with inflammation with aspirin. I would deal with inflammation with fish oil and turmeric. I would deal with inflammation in my diet and have an anti-inflammatory diet. I would keep high omega-6 things out of my diet, like vegetable oils and peanuts and cashews and things like that. I would have those high inflammatory things get out of my diet, corn-fed animals, and I would start to work on my diet from that standpoint. So um, I hope those conversations were helpful. We kind of run out of time for our show tonight, but I hope that this type of format tonight was good for you. I appreciate you listening to the show. I hope it's helping you and making your life better. I hope that it's helping your family's life to be better. And we'll be back tomorrow night at 6. If you got anything you want to talk about, send me a message. Be glad to talk to you about it. And otherwise, you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.